From the outside looking in,
right?
We just decided not to tell the world.
But how am I judging
everything?
Because I was trying to rush something seemingly?
You weren't trying to rush anything. You were trying to talk about.
But what you didn't know was we were married before the ceremony.
First, let's be clear about something. Bishop Noel Jones did not collapse in his pulpit. He was not rushed to Cedars-Sinai. There is no leaked voice memo. There is no handwritten letter in a safe. There is no succession war at City of Refuge. Every single one of those stories circulating online right now traces back to AI content farms generating fake drama to harvest clicks from people who genuinely love this man. The bishop is alive. He is well. And the real story, the one that actually deserves your attention, is far more interesting than anything a clickbait algorithm made up. Because while the internet was busy mourning a man who is very much still here, there is something Loretta said on camera years ago that explains everything about their 28-year story, and almost nobody has properly unpacked it. She was not waiting at the window. She was not counting the years. She was not the woman the internet assumed she was. And what she said, quietly, on a television aftershow, to a room full of people who thought they already knew the answer, is the confession that changes everything about how you read this story. Where he came from, the family behind the bishop. To understand the weight of what Noel Jones built, and the weight of what Loretta waded through, you have to start in Spanish Town, St. Catherine, Jamaica. Noel Jones was born there on January 31, 1950, the son of Bishop Robert W. Jones, a apostolic clergyman and politician, and Marjorie Jones. He was one of 7 children. His older sister was a girl named Beverly Grace Jones, who the world would later come to know simply as Grace Jones, model, singer, actress, and one of the most iconic figures of 1980s popular culture. Brother and sister grew up under the same strict roof. The family relocated to upstate New York in 1965 when Noel was 15. He received his call to ministry at Ninth, Ain. He studied at Ainon Bible College, run by the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World. He took his first pastorate at 26 at Bethel Temple in Longview, Texas. Then in June 1994, he stepped into the pulpit at Greater Bethany Community Church in South Los Angeles, a congregation that would eventually grow into City of Refuge Church, a 17,000-member community that became one of the most prominent Pentecostal churches on the West Coast. That same year, 1994, his marriage of more than 20 years to his first wife Ruth came to an end. They had 3 children together, Noel Jr., Tiffany, and Eric. A divorced bishop in his mid-40s, starting over in a city with no patience for failure, in a congregation watching his every move. And right in that season, he met Loretta, who Loretta actually is. Before The Ring, before the television show, before 28 years of speculation from people who had decided they understood her story, Loretta Jones is a chef trained at the Art Institute of Culinary Education. She is an entrepreneur, the owner of Loretta's Couture, a fashion and styling boutique in Los Angeles, and co-owner of JJ's Bistro, a restaurant she built alongside Bishop Jones. She has spent years organizing community outreach, healthcare events, and annual Thanksgiving gatherings that provide free meals, haircuts, groceries, and personal care items to thousands of people in the Los Angeles area. She is not a woman who built her identity around waiting for a man. She built an identity, and then she waited. The distinction matters, because the story the internet tells about Loretta, a devoted woman who spent 28 years hoping a bishop would propose, is not the story she told about herself, the moment she told the truth on camera. In 2013, Bishop Noel Jones joined the cast of Preachers of LA, the Oxygen Network reality series that gave the country a window into the lives of 6 prominent Los Angeles pastors and their families. Loretta was there. Their relationship, decades-long, unmarried, the subject of ongoing theological debate among the other cast members, became one of the defining storylines of the show. Bishop Ron Gibson and his wife Lavette were particularly direct about their concern. They argued publicly that a bishop in a decades-long relationship with a woman he had not married was not setting the right example for his congregation. Gibson said so to Jones's face, on camera, more than once, and during the after-show special, the question was finally asked directly to Loretta, "What do you actually want?" Her answer stopped the room. "To be honest, my perspective of marriage has changed from the time I met him until where we are now," Loretta said. "I'm happy with the way things are now, but if he proposed to me, I would accept." Read that again, because it is not the answer anyone expected. She was not saying she had been sitting at the window waiting. She was not saying she had been counting the years in grief. She was saying her relationship with the idea of marriage had shifted. She was saying she had arrived somewhere different from where she started. She was saying she would say yes, but she was no longer defining her life by whether or not he asked. That sentence, spoken quietly on an after-show special that most people scrolled past, is the key to understanding everything that happened before the proposal and everything that happened after it. What 28 years actually looks like. Bishop Jones himself has spoken publicly about why the proposal took as long as it did. He has been consistent about two things. First, his experience of his first marriage ending after 22 years left him genuinely afraid of standing at another altar. He said publicly that his previous experience had made him afraid of marriage. He used the Apostle Paul, who wrote that it is better to remain single as a theological framework for the choice. Whether that framework was sincere conviction or convenient protection is something only he knows, but the fear itself was real and acknowledged. Second, on the night of the proposal, January 30th, 2022, his 72nd birthday, he did not pretend the delay had been simple. Standing before his congregation, he laid his heart bare. He revealed all his fears about giving up his freedom. He also stated his worries about whether Loretta should be with someone closer to her age. However, he finally decided to get rid of all the worries, got down on one knee, and proposed to Loretta. She gladly accepted. He did not offer a theological defense. He offered a human one. He was afraid. He held on to the fear for a long time, and then he let it go. The congregation erupted, the footage spread, and after 28 years, the story that had been a source of debate in every gospel household in America finally had a different ending. The question: she changed by not chasing it. Here is what Loretta's 2013 statement actually did, looked at from the distance of a decade. She removed herself from the role of the woman waiting to be chosen. She did not do it loudly. She did not go on a podcast and announce she was done waiting. She said it quietly to a room full of people who were asking about her ring, and she essentially told them, "I stopped making his decision the measure of my worth." Women who know Loretta have described a quality in her that does not bend under social pressure. She built her business. She ran her boutique. She kept showing up for the church community she cared about. She kept cooking. She kept being the person she was before she met Noel Jones, and would remain regardless of whether he proposed. That quality, the refusal to reduce herself to a storyline in someone else's decision, is what makes her statement so significant, because the conventional wisdom about these situations is that when a man finally proposes after decades, he does so because the woman wore him down, because she finally convinced him, because she gave him an ultimatum he could not ignore. None of that happened here. What appears to have happened is the opposite. A woman arrived at a place of genuine internal freedom, a place where the ring stopped being the thing her life was built around, and the man beside her felt the temperature change and finally understood what he was about to lose. That is not a story about a woman winning. That is a story about a woman becoming so entirely herself that the man beside her finally saw her clearly. The allegation that hung in the room. Any honest account of this story has to include what happened in the summer of 2012. A tabloid report, never confirmed, never denied with force by any party involved, claimed that an X Factor contestant named Stacey Francis had a daughter whose father was allegedly Bishop Noel Jones. Francis herself later denied making the admission the report attributed to her. The bishop never publicly addressed it. City of Refuge issued no statement. No DNA test was ever made public. No court record ever surfaced. The allegation simply existed, in the air, on the internet, in the comments sections of every article about the couple, for years afterward. And Loretta, who had no ring on her finger and no public standing in any legal sense, had to read those headlines about a man she had built a life with for nearly 2 decades. She did not address it publicly. She did not respond on social media. She did not go on a competing platform and tell her version. She kept showing up. She kept running her boutique. She kept walking into church. Whether that silence was grace or something harder to name depends on what you believe about what women owe the world when the men beside them create situations that require silence to navigate. What is documented is that she stayed, and that the staying was her choice. What finally changed, and what it has to do with T.D. Jakes. People close to Bishop Jones have pointed to one event as the moment something shifted in him that years of Loretta's quiet presence had not. On November 24, 2024, Bishop T.D. Jakes, one of the closest friendships of Noel Jones's ministry life, a man he has preached beside for decades, collapsed at the pulpit of the Potter's House in Dallas. The video went viral within hours. The world feared the worst. In late March 2025, Jakes told the full story on NBC's Today Show. He had suffered a massive heart attack from a blood clot. He said he had been preaching with half of his heart closed through a clot he did not know was there. If he had arrived at the hospital 5 minutes later, he would not have survived. Bishop Noel Jones knew the schedule Jakes kept. He knew the travel, the preaching schedule, the relentless pace of ministry at that level. He knew because he kept the same schedule himself. And those close to Bishop Jones say that watching his closest friend nearly leave the earth on a stage in Dallas made him look at Loretta differently, made him see what it would mean if the same thing happened to him, and she was not his wife, made him understand that the woman who had been beside him for nearly 30 years deserved something more permanent than the relationship they had. The proposal came on January 30th, 2022, 2 years before Jakes' collapse, it should be noted. But the friendship, and the awareness of mortality it carries, is part of the long arc that led him there. What the story actually teaches. The version of this story that the internet wants to tell is about a woman who waited and finally won. The version Loretta told about herself is more interesting than that. She waited, but she stopped waiting in the way people assumed she was waiting. She built a life that did not depend on his answer. And when she finally got the ring, she had not been actively chasing. On a stage, in front of his congregation, on his 72nd birthday, she accepted it not as the validation she had been hoping for, but as the decision he had finally worked his way toward. She was not saved by the proposal. She had already done the saving herself. That is the part of this story that deserves to be told. Not the fake collapse, not the ICU drama, not the fabricated voice memo sitting in a safe. The real story is a woman in her 40s who said, quietly and on camera, that her view of marriage had changed, and meant every word of it. That is the full story. From Spanish Town, Jamaica, to a television aftershow, to a knee on a stage in Gardena, California. Here is what I want to know from you. Do you think Loretta made the right decision staying through everything? Or do you think the 28 years ask too much? There is no wrong answer here. Drop your honest take in the comments. Subscribe if you are not already. Notifications on. This community asks the real questions about faith and life and what people actually owe each other. And the conversations here are always worth having. Thank you for watching.